listener, and welcome. Tonight, you and I will journey together to a peaceful realm of ancient myths. Gently settle in and let go of the day's worries. Feel the soft pillow beneath your head and the warm comfort around you. In this safe and quiet moment, allow your mind to drift as softly as a cloud across the night sky. In a few moments, a gentle tale from long ago will unfold. Imagine the world slowing down, your breath easing into a calm, steady rhythm. With each breath, you sink deeper into relaxation, and as you breathe out, you release any lingering tension, letting it melt away into the darkness around you. There is nothing you need to do now but listen and rest. Now, as the stars twinkle above and a gentle night breeze whispers at your window, we begin our story. It is a tale born in the starlight of ancient Greece, a soft and soothing saga of gods and titans, of a great cosmic family and the dawn of a new era. I will tell it in hushed, gentle tones, like a lullaby carried on a summer night's wind. Let the images of this ancient tale drift through your mind, guiding you toward peaceful dreams as you listen. Our journey begins in an age before mortal memory, in a time when the world was young and ruled by powerful beings known as titans. In this mythic time, even the sky and earth were alive with magic and possibility. So come with me now, far back into that misty past. Picture a wide, starry sky stretching over gentle hills and quiet forests. Beneath that sky, the ancient earth is bathed in silver moonlight, and all is still. It is in this tranquil, primordial world that our tale unfolds, slowly and softly, guiding you further into rest with each passing word. Long ago, in that hushed and ancient time, the world was ruled by the Titans. These Titans were primordial gods, born of the earth and the sky. They were immense and strong, and for ages they kept order in the young world. The leader of the Titans was Cronus, a powerful being who presided over the cosmos from a lofty throne. By his side was Queen Rhea, the great mother goddess, gentle and caring. Under their rule, the earth was fruitful and the heavens steady. Yet even in this time of plenty, a quiet tension hung in the air, for Cronus carried a secret fear in his heart. Cronus remembered how he himself had come to power. In a time before our tale begins, he had rebelled against his own father, Uranus, the sky god. With the help of Gaia, the earth goddess, Cronus had taken his father's throne. But from that moment on, Cronus knew of a prophecy that one of his own children would someday overthrow him, just as he had done to Uranus. This thought troubled him deeply. He could not escape the fate that Mother Earth and Father Sky had whispered of. Every time he gazed out at the twilight horizon, Cronus wondered if his end was written among the stars. When Rhea bore their first child, a daughter named Hestia, Cronus's fear was awakened. Hestia was a sweet and innocent goddess of the hearth, bringing warmth and comfort. But Cronus, in his panic, did something unthinkable. To keep his throne safe, he took the newborn Hestia and swallowed her whole. Being an immortal child of Titans, she was not harmed, but she was imprisoned in the darkness of her father's being. Rhea was heartbroken, but Cronus insisted this was necessary. He believed that if the child remained free, his own rule would be threatened. Time passed, and Rhea gave birth to a second child. This was Demeter, destined to be goddess of the grain and the harvest, bringing nourishment to the land. Rhea hoped that this time Cronus would show mercy, but Cronus was equally terrified inside him, growing in a strange stasis. Rhea wept for their absence. The world above remained calm and beautiful, but sorrow took root in the mother's heart. A third child arrived, Hera, who would become goddess of women and family. Then a fourth, Hades, fated to rule the quiet realms of the underworld. And a fifth, Poseidon, who would one day command the vast seas. One after another, Rhea's beloved babies were taken from her arms by Cronus's fearful act. Each time, Rhea pleaded with her husband to spare them, and each time, Cronus refused. One by one, he swallowed each tiny god, hiding them away in the darkness inside himself. He told himself it was the only way to prevent the prophecy from coming true. But with every child he took, Rhea's grief grew, and a heavy silence fell over her days. Though Cronus continued to rule, and the world above seemed peaceful, an undercurrent of sadness ran through the halls of the Titans. Rhea moved quietly, her heart aching for the children she could neither hold nor see. At night she would gaze at the stars and silently pray to Gaia, the great Earth Mother, for guidance. Gaia had helped Cronus once. Perhaps now she would help Rhea save her next child. For Rhea was expecting yet another baby, a sixth. She resolved that this time she would not let history repeat itself. This child would not be lost. Rhea began to form a secret plan, determined to break the cruel cycle of fear and loss. When the time came for the sixth child to be born, Rhea prepared in silence. Under the cover of midnight stars, she slipped away from Cronus's watchful presence. With Gaia's gentle guidance, Rhea travelled to a distant land, the lush green island of Crete, far from the halls of the Titans. There, hidden in a sacred cave on Mount Dicta, she gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. His first cry was small but strong, echoing softly against the cave's stone walls. This child was Zeus, destined to become the king of gods someday, though now he was just a fragile newborn cradled in his mother's arms. In the dim, warm light of the cave, Rhea held the infant Zeus close to her breast. She felt his warmth and listened to his tiny breaths. Outside, the world was still. Only the faint rustling of leaves in the night breeze could be heard at the cave's mouth. Rhea knew she could not stay long, for Cronus would seek her and the child. Her heart pounded with both joy and fear as she pressed a gentle kiss on Zeus's forehead. She whispered a loving lullaby to him, her voice trembling but tender, promising that he would be safe. To keep that promise, Rhea took a smooth, rounded stone about the size of a swaddled infant. With careful hands, she wrapped the stone in soft cloth, swaddling it as if it were the newborn. The bundle looked like a sleeping baby. Cradling it to her chest, Rhea steeled herself and returned to Cronus's abode on Mount Othrys. In the great hall, Cronus stood tall and suspicious. Rhea presented the swaddled stone to him with a gentle, dutiful smile, assuring him it was their newborn son. Cronus, anxious and determined to prevent his downfall, took the bundle without unwrapping it. Without a second glance, perhaps not daring to look his wife in the eyes, he swallowed it whole, just as he had done with the others. The stone passed into his body, and Cronus let out a breath, believing he had thwarted fate once more. He did not realize, and Rhea did not show, that he had been tricked. Suppressing the quiver in her voice and the tears in her eyes, Rhea spoke soothingly to her husband, and Cronus suspected nothing. Deep inside, he felt the weight of the stone settle, but thought it was his infant son. And so, Olympus was satisfied that he had eliminated the threat. He gave no thought to the possibility that the real baby Zeus was alive, far away and safe. Rhea had outwitted the Titan King, at least for now. As soon as she could, she hurried back to Crete, her heart yearning for the hidden child. Back on Crete, in that secret cave, the infant Zeus was entrusted to loving caretakers while Rhea was away. Gaia, the primal earth, had sent gentle helpers to watch over him. Around the cave gathered nurturing nymphs, immortal maidens of the forests and springs. They moved quietly and lovingly, tending to the precious child. Among them were Adrastea and her sister Ide, two kind nymphs who took Zeus into their arms. They placed him in a cradle woven of soft branches and golden straw. To keep him truly hidden from Cronus' sight, they hung this cradle from a high tree within the cave, suspending it by ropes. In this way, little Zeus lay swaying in the air, not upon the ground, nor in the sea, nor under the open sky, tucked safely in between, where his father's gaze could not find him. There, in that dim and cozy cave, baby Zeus was safe and cared for. Whenever he whimpered or cried, the sound was muffled by the cave's depths and the thick foliage outside. Night and day, the nymphs stayed by his side, rocking the hanging cradle gently to lull him to sleep. They sang ancient, wordless songs, melodies as old as the woods themselves, to soothe the infant god. Their voices were light as mist, calming Zeus whenever he fussed. The cave was warm and fragrant, its floor lined with soft moss and dried grasses. Outside, the scent of wild thyme and blooming herbs drifted in, and the distant murmur of a brook could be heard. All of nature seemed to conspire to keep this child content and hidden. Zeus's nourishment came from the generous natural world around him. A divine goat named Amalthea, with a coat as white as moonlight, became his nurse. She gently nuzzled the baby and fed him with her rich, sweet milk. With each feeding, Zeus grew stronger. The goat remained by his side, patient and watchful, as though she knew the importance of her little charge. Meanwhile, golden bees from the high mountain forests brought honey to the cave, storing it in the honeycombs along the rocky walls. The nymphs would dip their fingers in this wild honey and let Zeus taste it. It had the fragrance of summer flowers and made the baby gurgle with delight. Thus, on milk and honey, gifts of a loving earth, Zeus was nourished. It is said in gentle myth that Zeus later blessed those bees, giving them their bright golden colour forever in gratitude for the sweetness they shared. Many whisper that even the magical food of the gods found its way to Zeus in that hidden sanctuary. Perhaps the heavens themselves aided him. On quiet mornings, the dew that collected at the cave's entrance had the faint flavour of ambrosia, and now and then birds from distant shores flew to the cave, carrying the scent of nectar on their feathers. All the world, from the smallest bee to the broad sky, seemed to protect and nurture this child of destiny. As months and years passed in secret, the infant Zeus grew into a robust young boy. Curly-haired and bright-eyed, he learned to walk and then run among the trees near the cave, under the watchful eyes of his nymph guardians. They taught him the names of the flowers and the songs of the birds. They told him gentle tales of the world and the sky, careful never to reveal too soon the heavy truth of his birth. Yet Zeus was clever and could sense that he was kept there for a special reason. Sometimes, when the night was clear, the nymph Adrastea would point out the distant peak of Cronus' mountain on the horizon and whisper to him mighty Cronus. Young Zeus would feel a quiet fire kindle in his heart at those words, though he did not yet fully know why. From time to time, his mother Rhea came to the secret cave, always under great secrecy, and often at night when Cronus slept. She would embrace her son, marvelling at how tall and strong he was becoming. She could see in his youthful face a glimmer of the king he would someday be. During these visits, Rhea and the nymphs at last told Zeus of the fate of his brothers and sisters. They spoke gently so as not to alarm him. Zeus learned that he had 5 elder siblings trapped in enchanted slumber within Cronus. He learned how his mother had saved him from that fate by her courage and trickery. Though Zeus's young heart burned with sorrow for his siblings and anger at the injustice, the nymphs and Rhea quickly comforted him, lest his cries of outrage be heard on the wind. They reminded him that patience and secrecy were as important now as courage, for the time to act had not yet come. Zeus understood, and in a soft, solemn voice, he vowed that one day he would free his brothers and sisters. So Zeus remained patient, growing in strength and wisdom. Gaia, the earth, occasionally whispered guidance to him through the rustling of the leaves and the echoes in the cave. From her, Zeus learned about the balance of the world, that the time of the Titans was fated to give way to the time of the Olympian gods, just as day gives way to night and night returns to day. He came to understand that his destiny was part of the natural order, not an act of revenge, but a restoration of harmony. This understanding made him calm and resolute. He did not hate his father, Cronus. Rather, he felt sad for the fear that ruled Cronus's heart. Zeus's desire was not to punish, but to free, to ensure that life and light could flourish without fear. Years rolled by like gentle waves on a shore. Zeus grew from a boy into a handsome young man, tall and strong. His skin was sun-kissed from playing in the meadows, and his laughter often echoed among the hills as he chased deer or raced the wind. He was kind and just, helping injured birds or lost lambs he found, guided by the nurturing teachings of his caretakers. Yet always at the back of his mind was the knowledge of his siblings waiting in darkness, and of his mother who yearned to see them free. By the time Zeus reached adulthood, the moment for action had finally come. The signs were clear. One night, beneath a sky spangled with stars, he heard Gaia's voice in his sleep, gently urging him to go forth and fulfill his destiny. On another morning, Rhea came to him at dawn, her face gentle but determined, and told him quietly that the hour was near. Cronus had grown unwary, and they must be ready to act. Zeus nodded, his heart thumping steadily, full of both resolve and compassion. He knew what he had to do, and he knew he would not be alone. Thus, with a last look around the beloved cave of his childhood, Zeus prepared to leave. The nymphs who had raised him gave their blessings. Amalthea, the dear goat who had fed him, nuzzled his hand one last time. With gratitude shining in his eyes, Zeus thanked them all for their care and love. Adrastea offered him a parting gift, one of Amalthea's horns, which would always provide nourishment and abundance. This was the first hint of the cornucopia, a magical horn of plenty. Zeus accepted this gift with a grateful smile, knowing it might sustain him in the trials to come. Then, cloaked in a simple traveller's cloak, and armed with nothing but his wits and the quiet power growing inside him, Zeus set off under the light of the moon. The night was calm and clear, as if the world itself held its breath. The stars above seemed to shimmer with anticipation as Zeus made his way towards his father's realm. Zeus journeyed across land and sea, moving with quiet purpose beneath the silver moon and then under the golden sun. At last, he reached his father's domain. Cronus, believing he had eliminated all threats, was not expecting what was to come. In fact, Cronus had grown complacent over the years, thinking that all his children were either by his side or safely tucked away within him. Rhea, still living beside Cronus as his queen, pretended to know nothing of Zeus's survival. She bided her time, waiting with a hopeful heart for the perfect moment to help her son. One evening, Cronus held a great feast for the Titans in his grand hall atop Mount Othrys. The long table was laden with golden platters of ambrosia and brimming goblets of sweet nectar. Music from lyres and flutes drifted through the hall, and for the first time in years, Cronus laughed, believing his reign secure. Firelight danced on stone columns as Titan lords and ladies revelled. Among the servants pouring wine and attending the guests, a new cupbearer moved with grace and calm. This cupbearer was Zeus in disguise, now a grown god hiding in plain sight among Cronus's household. At Rhea's subtle nod from her seat beside Cronus, Zeus approached the Titan king with a large ornate cup filled with dark red wine. Earlier that day, a wise Titaness named Metis, known for her good counsel, had secretly aided Zeus. She had prepared a powerful draught, a potion mixed into the wine that Zeus now carried. As Zeus neared Cronus's throne, his heart beat steadily. He kept his eyes lowered to avoid any spark of recognition, though Cronus had never seen his youngest son grown, and likely would not have known him. Kneeling respectfully, Zeus offered the gleaming goblet to his father as a special gift. Cronus, in high spirits from the feast, took the cup without suspicion or a second thought. In one long swallow, he drank the potion-laced wine down to its dregs. Moments passed. A hush fell over the hall as Cronus paused, a strange look coming over his face. Deep inside him, the magic potion began to work. Cronus's stomach churned uneasily. He felt a sudden pain, a great nausea rolling through him. With a groan that echoed like distant thunder, the Titan King doubled over. Titans rose from their couches in alarm as Cronus fell to his knees on the marble floor, clutching his belly. Zeus swiftly stepped back, casting off his servant's cloak and revealing himself. Rhea rushed forward, not to aid her husband, but to be ready for what was to come. Cronus retched a great heaving that rattled the hall, and then, with a wrenching convulsion, he began to disgorge what lay in his depths. First came a heavy object wrapped in cloth, the stone that Rhea had given him in place of baby Zeus. It fell to the floor with a dull thud. Cronus stared at it in dazed confusion, realization slowly dawning in his eyes. But before he could react, something else happened. From Cronus's mouth emerged a shape bathed in soft, radiant light. It was a goddess, grown to her full stature, Hestia, the eldest daughter, free at last. Cronus gagged again, and out came another form. Demeter, released and stretching her arms, as if waking from a long dream. Rhea gasped in joy as she saw her daughters appear. One by one, Cronus's captive children were being freed, as the potion forced him to yield them up. Next to spill forth was Hera, her eyes blazing first with anger and then and softening with relief as she beheld her mother nearby. Then Hades tumbled out and rose to his feet, drawing in a long breath of the free air, his dark eyes blinking in the light. And finally, Poseidon emerged, strong and tall, with sea blue eyes wide in amazement. The 5 siblings stood together, dazed but unharmed, as if no time had passed for them. They had been imprisoned in a strange, timeless state, and now they awakened to the world again. For a heartbeat, the Titans in the hall were struck silent with astonishment. There before them stood the 5 young gods and goddesses whom they had thought lost forever. A radiant power began to fill the hall as the Olympian siblings recognized each other and came together. Rhea wept with happiness, rushing to embrace Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. She held them tightly, tears of joy shining on her cheeks. The newly freed siblings turned and saw Zeus, now revealed, standing confidently among them. In that moment of reunion, there was a brief and beautiful calm. The family that had been torn apart was whole again, gathered together under the high ceiling of Cronus' hall. Hera gently touched Zeus's arm in gratitude. Poseidon gave a grateful nod, and Hades offered a quiet, relieved smile. Hestia and Demeter reached for their youngest brother who had saved them, their eyes warm with grateful tears. Rhea's heart was full as she looked at her children, free and united at last. But the silence did not last long. Cronus, still weakened and on his hands and knees, looked up at this unfolding scene. His worst fear had come to pass before his very eyes. Rage and terror contorted his face. With a trembling hand, he reached for his great scythe, the cruel blade of adamantine with which he had once overthrown Uranus. The Titans in the hall began to stir, confusion quickly turning into fury as they realized an insurrection was at hand. The air grew tense, the warmth of the feast giving way to a deadly chill. Rhea stepped protectively in front of her children as Cronus let out a thunderous roar of fury that shook the pillars, crying out in outrage at the betrayal, his voice echoing through the great hall. Zeus knew that the peaceful reunion was over. Now came the conflict long foretold. He gently pushed Rhea and his siblings behind him, shielding them. With a calm yet firm resolve, he spoke out, addressing his father and declaring that Cronus' reign was at an end and the time for change had come. Cronus, stumbling to his feet, swung his massive scythe in a wide arc. Zeus narrowly stepped back, the blade slicing the air with a vicious hiss. The other Titans, led by mighty Atlas and fierce Hyperion, rallied to Cronus' side, snatching up weapons and mustering their own innate powers. Rhea and Metis quickly pulled the still-dazed siblings away, urging them to flee from the hall. They were unarmed and just regaining their strength. Zeus alone stood facing the enraged Cronus and his Titan guards for a brief moment, buying time for his family to escape immediate danger. With a sweep of his arm, Zeus summoned a burst of wind that swept through the hall, dousing torches and tossing up a veil of dust, causing Titan guests to stumble in confusion. In the sudden dimness and disarray, Zeus and the Olympians fled the hall and disappeared into the night. They made their way swiftly down the slopes of Mount Orthrus, guided by the faint light of stars and the sure hand of Gaia who watched over them. When they reached a safe distance, high on another mountain that pierced the clouds, they paused. This mountain was Mount Olympus, destined to be their stronghold. It was here, amidst ancient pine trees and cold, pure springs, that Zeus and his siblings caught their breath and prepared for the great battle fate of the world. Far behind them, the roar of Cronus echoed across the valleys. The Titan King's wrath was immense. He bellowed commands into the night, calling upon all Titans loyal to him to arm themselves. The night that had been so calm moments before was now alive with the first stirrings of conflict. From Mount Olympus, Zeus could see fires flaring to life on distant Mount Othrys as the Titans assembled their strength. The Titanomachy, the great war between the Titans and the new Olympian gods, was about to begin. Zeus knew they would need allies to stand against the full might of Cronus and his brethren. He remembered Gaia's earlier counsel, that there were others who suffered under Cronus's rule, others who would aid him if freed. Among these were the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncheires, known as the 100-handed ones, whom Cronus had kept imprisoned deep in the earth. These ancient beings had been locked away out of fear, much as Zeus's siblings had been. But unlike the Olympians, the Cyclopes and 100-handers had been imprisoned not inside Cronus, but in the gloomy abyss of Tartarus, far below the world's surface. Cronus had cast them down there long ago, fearing their strength and skills. Without delay, Zeus decided to seek them out. He left his siblings under Rhea's care on Mount Olympus, which was cloaked in cloud to hide them, and journeyed to a distant rocky cleft that plunged into the underworld depths. Carrying a torch of blue flame to light his way, Zeus descended into the roots of the earth. The air grew heavy and still as he ventured further down, and time itself seemed to slow in that sunless place. Soon he reached the massive bronze gates of Tartarus, the dungeon-like abyss reserved for the most powerful and dangerous of beings. The gates were wrapped in thick chains and guarded by a monstrous creature, a dragoness with scales as black as coal, and eyes that glowed like embers, known as Campe. Campe hissed at the intruder, her tail tipped with venomous spines rattling ominously. But Zeus, fueled by the righteousness of his cause, confronted her without fear. Not wishing to prolong any fight in that tomb-like darkness, he raised his torch high. The bright blue light was like a shard of daytime in the darkness, startling the dragoness. In a commanding voice, Zeus invoked his right as the new king of the gods, and demanded the captives be released. The dragoness, confused by the sudden flare of divine light and the authority in Zeus's tone, lunged at him wildly. In one swift motion, Zeus evaded her snapping jaws and struck out with a bolt of crackling energy he summoned from the very air. A sharp crack of thunder resounded in the cavern as the dragoness recoiled, stunned. Seizing the moment, Zeus grabbed the heavy chains and with all his godly strength smashed them against the rock. The iron links shattered, the clatter echoing through the vast chamber. With a deep groan, the bronze gates of Tartarus creaked open. From the darkness beyond, the gates came a rumble, and then figures emerged into Zeus's flickering torchlight. First, 3 towering giants stepped forward. These were the Hecatoncheires, each a colossal being with 50 heads and 100 strong arms. Though fearsome in shape, their faces showed relief and gratitude as they tasted freedom once more. They had languished in the dark, but now hope returned to their many eyes. Behind them came the Cyclopes, 3 one-eyed brothers, Brontes, Sterobes, and Argus, master smiths with mighty arms, their single eyes blinking at the torchlight. The Cyclopes had been imprisoned for their might and their skill in crafting, but now they bowed in respect to Zeus. Brontes, his voice like a low returns to the world above. A new dawn they would bring together. They all agreed wholeheartedly. They bore no love for Cronus, who had unjustly chained them. Zeus led them out of the abyss, up toward the fresh air. As they ascended, a faint tremor was felt in the world above. Gaia herself shuddering with relief and delight that her long-imprisoned children were free. When Zeus returned to Mount Olympus with these formidable allies at his side, his siblings and Rhea rejoiced. The strength of their cause had grown tremendously. The 100-handed ones took up positions around Mount Olympus like living fortresses, each giant ready to hurl great boulders or mountains if need be. The Cyclopes, their single eyes keen and their hands skilled, set to work without delay, eager to aid Zeus and his kin. They built blazing forges in the depths of the mountain, stoking furnaces with sacred oak wood and breathing bellows fired by volcanic heat from the earth's core. In those divine forges, under the flicker of hearthlight and sparks dancing like stars, the Cyclopes began to craft gifts of power for Zeus and his brothers. They hammered and sang in deep, rhythmic voices as they worked, a song of making that rang through the mountain like a steady heartbeat. For Zeus, they wrought a mighty thunderbolt, a weapon that shone like a shaft of pure sunlight and crackled with the energy of storms. They drew copper and tin from the earth and pulled white-hot lightning from the sky, melding them into this awe-inspiring bolt that would obey Zeus's will. When they cooled it in a basin of water, steam hissed, and the cave lit up briefly, as if with summer lightning. They placed the finished thunderbolt in Zeus's hands. It felt warm and alive, humming with quiet thunder, ready to protect the righteous and strike down tyranny. Zeus thanked them, his eyes bright with resolve. For Poseidon, the Cyclopes forged a grand trident from the essence of the seas. They journeyed to a secret grotto where the purest seawater flowed, and from it extracted shimmering salt and ores. In their forge, these elements were shaped into a three-pronged spear that glinted blue-green, the colour of deep ocean waters. The trident carried the hush of calm tides and the power to stir the sea into mighty waves. When Poseidon received this gift, he felt the call of every river and ocean, and he knew he could command the waters, as gently or fiercely as he pleased. He held it aloft, and a fine mist of sea spray emanated from it, cooling the air around him. For Hades, the Cyclopes fashioned a helmet unlike any other, the helm of darkness. They gathered materials not from light, but from the deepest shadows, the still blackness under midnight trees, the gloom of distant caves, the moment of twilight when day and night embrace. Hammering these intangible things on their anvil, the Cyclopes forged a helm, dark as a moonless night, and adorned it with obsidian jewels that glinted like tiny stars. This helm would grant Hades the power of invisibility, allowing him to move unseen wherever he wished. When Hades gently placed it upon his head to test it, his form vanished from sight, leaving only the echo of his footsteps and his calm, solemn laugh as proof he was still there. He removed the helm with a grateful nod to the Cyclopes. Armed now with these treasures and backed by their powerful new allies, Zeus and his siblings felt a serene confidence. Though a great battle loomed, they had the tools and the friends to face it. On the broad plateau of Mount Olympus, the 6 young Olympians gathered under the open sky. They formed a circle beneath the glittering stars and vowed to stand united. Zeus stood in the centre, looking at each of his brothers and sisters in turn. Hestia, with calm warmth in her eyes, Demeter, gently determined, Hera, fierce and protective, Poseidon, gripping his trident firmly, Hades holding his helm at his side. Rhea stood beside them, pride and love shining on her face. Not far off, their giant and one-eyed allies stood vigilant, like kindly guardians. All was nearly ready for the confrontation to come. Down below, in the valleys and plains, the Titans were on the move. The night could not hide the glints of their bronze armour, nor the tremors of their heavy footsteps. Cronus had assembled a vast host of Titan brothers and their fierce offspring. Atlas marched at the forefront, bearing a massive shield like a moving wall. Hyperion's eyes glowed with the fire of the sun he once embodied, lighting the way for the Titan forces. Curs, Iapetus, Crius, all mighty Titans, prepared for war, along with many of their powerful sons and daughters. Even some younger Titans like Menetius, known for his rash strength, stood armed with jagged spears that crackled with energy. The ground quaked softly as they advanced. This was to be the last stand of the old order. Then came the pale light of dawn, softly greying the sky. On the 10th morning since Zeus had freed his siblings, for much had happened in those days of preparation, the sun rose to witness the beginning of the war. As golden rays spilled over the horizon, they illuminated a scene of awe. Two great hosts arrayed against each other. On one side, atop Mount Olympus, stood Zeus and the new gods, with their loyal allies towering beside them. On the other, atop Mount Othrys, across the great plain, stood Cronus, flanked by Titans of immense stature. The valley between them lay quiet and expectant, as if the world itself held its breath. Suddenly, with a resounding horn blast from the Titan camp and the answering crack of Zeus's thunderbolt from the Olympian side, the stillness broke. The Titanomachy erupted in full force. The sky was soon torn between sunlit blue and roiling battle clouds of grey. From Mount Othrys, Cronus's Titan legion surged forward like a wave of stone and bronze. From Mount Olympus, Zeus and his allies met them like a rising tide of determined light and energy. The clash shook the very foundations of the world. Olympus and Othrys each unleashed their full power, and the elements themselves became weapons. Zeus stood at the forefront of the Olympians, casting his lightning bolts across the battlefield. Brilliant flashes lit the heavens, each bolt tearing through the sky like a falling star, and striking with a boom of thunder that made the very ground tremble. The swift flying bolts illuminated the clouds in dazzling white before leaving the sky dark once more. Opposing him, Cronus and his Titan brothers answered with raw force, hurling mountains and gigantic spears of stone toward Mount Olympus. The 100-handed giants answered in kind. Bracing their enormous forms, they heaved up boulders the size of hills and flung them 100 at a time. The rocks flew through the sky like a storm of meteors, crashing into the Titan ranks and pounding the earth with deafening impact. Valleys were carved, and new hills formed where those massive stones fell. Poseidon, standing beside Zeus, called upon the power of the sea and the earth. Raising his trident high, he struck the ground with its prongs. The earth answered, cracks spidered through the plain, and from these fissures burst torrents of water drawn up from the deep. A great rush of water flooded portions of the battlefield, swirling around Titan legs and throwing many off balance. With another thrust of his trident, Poseidon summoned enormous waves from afar. Though the ocean was distant, the force of water came inland as foaming surges that swept against the Titan flank. Where Poseidon slammed his trident down again, the ground split and quaked, toppling some Titans onto the shaking earth. His voice echoed like the roar of the ocean, fierce and unyielding, as he pressed the attack. Meanwhile, Hades moved silently through the chaos, cloaked in the helm of darkness. Invisible to all eyes, he slipped behind the Titan lines. With deliberate stealth, he spread confusion in the enemy's ranks. A Titan would draw back an arm to strike, only to have his weapon mysteriously yanked from his grip by unseen hands. Hades is doing. Another would find the ground slick underfoot, as if someone unseen had swept their legs. The shadow of Hades sowed quiet panic. Cronus' soldiers grew nervous, glancing over their shoulders at threats they could not see. Using his invisibility, Hades even approached mighty Hyperion undetected and cast a veil over the Titan's shining eyes, dimming his guiding light and causing disorder among the Titans who followed him. In this way, Hades protected his siblings, turning the Titan's own size and strength against them through confusion and misdirection. The Olympian goddesses, too, lent their aid in subtle but powerful ways. Hera, though not armed with thunder or trident, was fearless and keen-minded. She rode into battle in a chariot of pure white, drawn by peacocks with iridescent feathers shimmering even amid the dust. Hera's clear, commanding voice rang out over the din whenever the Olympians faltered, encouraging her brothers and sisters onward. She reminded them of what they fought for: freedom, family, and a bright future for the world. Her presence was inspiring. Wherever Hera went, morale was bolstered, and the Olympian line held firm. Demeter, compassionate even in war, reached out with her power over nature. At her will, the ground underfoot sprouted thick vines and grasses that tangled around the Titans' feet and slowed their charges. Great oaks and olive trees on the fringes of the battlefield bent and swung their branches, blocking or tripping some Titans as they advanced. While these plants could not stop a Titan's strength outright, they hindered and distracted, giving the swifter Olympians an advantage. And in moments of respite, Demeter's influence caused nourishing wild fruits and wheat stalks to spring up from the earth, offering sustenance to her weary siblings and allies, fortifying them as the battle wore on. Hestia, the gentlest of the Olympians, did not take up arms. It was not in her nature to fight. Instead, she stayed back at the camp on Mount Olympus, tending a hearth fire that she had lit at the outset of battle. Throughout the long conflict, Hestia kept this flame burning bright and steady. Its warm glow and gentle crackle were a constant comfort to the Olympians whenever they glanced back. In the evenings, when battle lulled, the siblings gathered around Hestia's hearth to rest. She offered them warmth, baked bread, and soothing words. Her firelight eased their fatigue and healed their spirits, reminding them of the home and peace they were fighting to achieve. In this way, Hestia's contribution was quiet but immeasurable. She sustained the very heart of the Olympian force. Day after day, the battles raged. When the sun climbed high, the sky would be streaked with lightning and darkened by flying rocks as the two sides struggled mightily. And when dusk fell, both armies would pull back to rest. For even immortal beings grow weary and need respite. In the quiet of each night, the battlefield would fall silent, except for the Hestia's golden fire. Rhea moved among them, caressing their hair or shoulders with a mother's tenderness, reminding them of their purpose. On the opposite side, the Titans camped under the open sky, nursing their pride and plotting the next day's attack, while Cronus's anger smouldered like a dying fire, hot and unyielding. So the war stretched on, not for a single day or even a year, but for year after year. The earth cycled through sowing and harvest, through winter's chill and spring's bloom, again and again, while the Titanomachy endured. It is said the war lasted 10 full years. In the mortal world below, though few humans yet roamed, the very land felt the strain of this cosmic battle. Great forests shuddered at the distant thunder of gods. The ground sometimes quaked subtly from far-off clashes. Ash from burning forests tinged sunsets red. But through it all, the balance of power remained nearly even, neither side relenting or able to secure a final victory. On the dawn of the 10th year, Zeus knew the time had come to bring the conflict to an end. The Olympians had grown in skill, strength, and unity with each passing year. The Titans, though immensely powerful, were wearied by the ceaseless strife. That morning, as a gentle pink light began to edge the eastern sky, Zeus convened one last council with his siblings and allies on the peak of Olympus. The cool dawn air was quiet, but for the distant call of a lone bird. All the Olympians gathered around Zeus, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of Hestia's hearthfire, which she had kept alive through the dark night. Zeus spoke of pouring all their strength into one last stand to finally end the war and free the world from turmoil. His voice was calm and confident. The others listened and agreed. Each knew their part for this final effort. As the sun climbed higher on that decisive day, both sides marshalled their full might once more. Cronus, desperate to crush this rebellion, summoned all the ancient power at his command. He brandished his adamantine sickle, determined to destroy Zeus and his allies once and for all. The Titans roared and advanced like a collapsing mountain, intent on smashing Olympus to rubble. For a moment, it seemed the Titans might overwhelm the Olympians. Cronus himself led a ferocious charge, cutting through the battlefield with his scythe and driving the Olympians back up the slopes of Olympus. Atlas barreled forward under the onslaught of boulders, using his massive shoulders to shove aside the rubble. The ground shook violently with each step of the Titan horde climbing Olympus's flanks. Even the stout-hearted hundred-handers found themselves straining as they flung rocks as fast as they could, trying to stem the Titan tide. But Zeus would not allow the daylight of this 10th year to fade without victory. He climbed to the highest peak of Mount Olympus and reached deep into the well of his power. Calling upon the sky itself, Zeus raised his arms, and the heavens answered. Dark clouds began to gather from all corners of the sky, drawn by Zeus's will. They swirled above the mountain, growing into a mighty tempest. The bright morning was soon replaced by an eerie twilight, as the sun's light was veiled by towering thunderheads. The air grew charged and expectant, the wind picking up and whipping around the mountaintop. Zeus stood tall against the swirling clouds, and in his hand the thunderbolt gleamed, its tips sparking with brilliant light. With a voice that rang out over friend and foe alike, Zeus let out a resounding cry and hurled the largest bolt of lightning yet seen. It tore through the churning sky and struck the ground directly in front of the onrushing Titans with a blinding flash. The thunder that followed was so tremendous that it shook the clouds themselves and sent shockwaves rippling through the earth. The force of the blast threw many Titans off their feet and sent them reeling. Even the indomitable Cronus stumbled, momentarily stunned by the sheer power unleashed. Seizing this pivotal moment, the 300-handed giants acted in unison. With a collective heave and a rumbling shout, they uprooted whole crags and cliffs from the mountainside, chunks of rock larger than any thrown before, and hurled them down at the Titan army. A barrage of gigantic boulders rained upon the Titans like a stone avalanche. The sky was filled with the roar of their descent. When they hit the earth, the impact was devastating. The ground quaked, great clouds of dust billowed upward, and deep craters dented the plain. Titans cried out in shock as they were pelted and buried by this onslaught. Many Titans were pinned under the heavy rubble, while others shielded themselves and retreated, finally feeling the weight of exhaustion and defeat. Poseidon and Hades then combined their powers to seal the victory. Poseidon raised his trident and summoned one last colossal wave from far-off seas, sending it rushing through the earth itself. Water burst forth from fissures in the battlefield, washing over the scattered Titans and reducing the last of their cohesion. At the same time, Hades disappeared under his helm and moved swiftly among the disoriented enemy, binding their feet with shadows and dragging weapons out of their reach. Atlas, ever valiant, tried to push back, straining to lift one of the enormous boulders that had trapped his arm. In that instant, Zeus struck one final time. He called another thunderbolt from the brooding clouds and cast it directly at Cronus. The bolt struck the ground at Cronus's feet and exploded in light and sound. The great Titan king was blasted backward. His ancient sickle, already cracked from their earlier clash, flew from his hand and shattered into countless sparkling shards. Cronus himself was hurled to the ground, landing amid the debris and fallen Titans. He tried to rise, but the fight had left him at last. The prophecy had been fulfilled. He was overcome by the child he had sought to destroy. Seeing Cronus fall, the remaining Titans lost all will to continue. A few who could still move turned and fled toward the far horizons, hoping to hide at the edges of the world. The rest simply slumped down, weapons slipping from their grasp, their great heads bowed in defeat. A heavy stillness fell over the battlefield as the din of battle faded. The dark war clouds began to part, sunlight streaming through in gentle beams. The only sounds now were the tumble of a few pebbles and the ragged breathing of gods and Titans alike. The 10-year war was over. The Olympians had won. For a moment, the victors could scarcely believe it. The Olympians stood battered and dust-covered, gazing across the plain at their vanquished foes. Then slowly, a warm, triumphant joy began to well up among them. Poseidon lifted his arm high and let out a cheer that echoed against the mountains. Athena, who had sprung into being during the war from Zeus's head, though that is another story, raised a victorious cry. The 100-handers let out booming hoots of triumph, like joyous thunder, and the Cyclopes emerged from their forge, raising their hammers in salute, grinning through their sooty faces. Hera embraced Demeter and Hestia, and even serious Hades smiled quietly as he removed his helm, reappearing at Zeus's side. Zeus himself closed his eyes for a moment and exhaled a long breath of relief. When he opened them, they shone with gratitude. Rhea walked across across the scarred battlefield to where Cronus lay defeated. Cronus, once so proud and tall, now knelt on the broken ground, bruised and weary. The great Titan looked up at his wife approaching. There was fear and sorrow in his eyes, but also a strange kind of acceptance, as if he finally understood that this outcome had always been fated. Rhea's own eyes were filled with tears, not of joy or sorrow alone, but a mix of both for the husband she had loved and the pain he had caused. She reached out and gently placed a hand on Cronus's shoulder. No words were spoken between them, but in that touch was a quiet farewell, and perhaps forgiveness. Cronus hung his head and did not resist, as Zeus and Poseidon came to bind him with unbreakable chains. With solemn duty, Zeus and the Olympians gathered the defeated Titans, those who had led the war: Cronus, Atlas, Hyperion, Caius, Iapetus, Menoetius, and others who had fought fiercely, were to be imprisoned in Tartarus, the deepest abyss, so they could never threaten the world's peace again. The 100-handed ones, eager to help secure the hard-won victory, volunteered to be their jailers. One by one, the Titans were marched to the gaping pit of Tartarus. Some went raging and shouting, others silent and sullen. As they reached the brink of that endless darkness, Zeus struck the ground with his thunderbolt, opening the bronze gates that had once held the Cyclopes. The Titans were ushered through those gates into the gloom beyond. Zeus then sealed the entrance behind them with thick chains of adamantine, fused by a final bolt of lightning. The 100-handed ones took up guard outside, ensuring the prison would hold for eternity. Inside Tartarus, the Titans' roars of anger eventually subsided into echoes, then faded into silence. However, Zeus was merciful where mercy was due. Those Titans who had not fought against the Olympians or who had aided them were spared punishment and treated with respect. Gentle Meti, whose wise counsel had helped achieve victory, was honoured and invited to Olympus. Themis, Titaness of divine justice, who had quietly supported the rightful cause, was also welcomed in the new order. Old Oceanus, the Titan of the world-encircling river, and his wife Tethys had remained neutral throughout the war. They were left undisturbed to continue their eternal flow of waters around the earth. Zeus showed that his rule would not be one of vengeance, but of fairness and wisdom. Zeus did mete out a special fate to one particular Titan, Atlas, who had been among Cronus's mightiest commanders and had fought with exceptional valour, was given a unique punishment. Zeus decreed that Atlas must henceforth hold up the sky itself. During the war, the turmoil had shaken heaven and earth, threatening to bring the sky crashing down. Now the sky needed a steadfast guardian. At the edge of the world, where day meets night, Zeus led Atlas and commanded him to kneel. With a heavy heart but unbroken spirit, Atlas obeyed. Upon Atlas's broad shoulders, Zeus placed the vault of the heavens, a burden vast and immeasurable. Atlas rose, muscles bulging and legs braced, and assumed the weight of the sky. From that moment on, Atlas was doomed to stand forever, carrying the heavens on his back, ensuring that the sky would never again threaten to fall upon the earth. Though it was a punishment, it was also a duty of great honour and importance, and Atlas bore it in stalwart silence. To this day, it said, if you look to the far western horizon at dusk, you might imagine the silhouette of Atlas, enduring and strong, holding the sky aloft as the stars wheel above. When the dust of battle settled last echoes of thunder faded, a profound peace descended on the world. The earth, which had been rent and scarred, began to heal. Gaia herself smoothed the lands with tender care. The deep gouges in the ground became valleys. The piles of fallen rocks turned into new hills and mountains that would, in time, grow green with forests. The air cleared, the smoky haze lifted, revealing a pure blue sky. Gentle rains fell to wash the blood and soot away, and the sun shone warm and golden upon the rejuvenated earth. The natural world breathed a sigh of relief. Birds cautiously returned to the quieted plains, their songs tentative at first, then growing confident. A rainbow arched across the sky, bright and multi-hued, as if the universe itself smiled after the long storm. High atop Mount Olympus, under a clear and tranquil sky, Zeus and his siblings gathered to mark the dawn of their reign. They stood together on the mountain's peak, which was now truly theirs. White clouds drifted lazily around them, and below, the world stretched out in all directions, green and renewed. A gentle breeze, cool and fresh, played in their hair. In this serene moment, Zeus turned to his brothers and sisters with gratitude and love. They had come through the storm together. Now a new day was beginning. The first act of the Olympians was to thank their steadfast allies. Zeus and his siblings warmly honoured the Cyclopes and the 100-handed giants for their vital aid. The Cyclopes were invited to stay on Mount Olympus as esteemed craftsmen, free to practice their arts in service of the gods, rather than languishing in a prison. The Cyclopes accepted with grins, already dreaming of the wonders they would forge for this bright new era. Palaces of gleaming stone, magical chariots, and beautiful ornaments for the gods. The 100-handed ones were given the charge of forever guarding the Titans in Tartarus, a duty they took up with pride, glad to use their strength to maintain the peace they had fought for. And so, these ancient beings who once had been feared found a place in the new order as valued friends and protectors. Then Zeus and his brothers divided among themselves the realms of the world to rule in harmony and balance. To avoid any quarrel, they decided to cast lots, leaving the choice to fair chance, or perhaps to destiny's guiding hand. Zeus shook a helmet filled with 3 marked stones. Hades reached in first and drew out the lot for the underworld, the shadowy realm of souls beneath the earth. It was a somber domain, but Hades accepted it with a quiet nod, understanding that he would bring order and care to the realm of the departed. Poseidon drew next and received the sea as his realm. Every ocean, lake, and river would answer to his gentle tides or fierce storms. Poseidon was well pleased, for he loved the rolling waves and the deep, mysterious waters. The final lot fell to Zeus, and it was the broad sky, the open heavens with the clouds, winds, and the light of sun, moon, and stars. This was fitting, as Zeus had proven himself lord of the sky's thunder and lightning. Thus it was settled. Zeus was acclaimed by all as king of the gods, ruler of the sky and air, Poseidon as the lord of all waters, and Hades as the king of the underworld. The solid earth itself, the ground and living things upon it, they agreed to govern together and to never apportion. It would remain common to all, mortal and immortal alike, with each god guiding the part closest to their nature. And Mount Olympus, the lofty peak where they stood, would be the home where they could gather in fellowship. sisters, Hestia, Demeter, and Hera, also took their rightful places in the new world. Zeus turned to Hestia, the eldest and gentlest, and decreed that Hestia, kind and peaceful, would tend the sacred flame for both gods and mortals, so that her warmth would ever remind all of the comfort of home and hearth. Hestia smiled softly, pleased with this role. She knew she would kindle not only the fires in Olympus, but also the hearth fires in mortal homes, bringing unity and peace to both realms. To Demeter, Zeus gave care over the bounty of the earth. He entrusted Demeter with the growth of all fruits and grains, that she would ensure the fields were plentiful and the orchards heavy with fruit, helping life flourish under their gentle reign. Demeter nodded happily, already feeling the rich soil and the promise of seed and harvest at her fingertips. Under her guidance, the world's orchards would bow with sweet apples and olives, and golden wheat would whisper in summer fields, nourishment for all living creatures. To Hera, Zeus gave the honour of being Queen of Olympus, protector of marriage and family, so that together they would guide both gods and mortals with wisdom and care. Hera's eyes shone as she accepted her place. In time, she would also become Zeus's wife, uniting the ruling family even closer. As queen, Hera would champion the sacred bonds of marriage and watch over families and women, blessing unions with trust and love. All the Olympians agreed that Hera's regal spirit and strong heart made her perfect for this role. Thus the new pantheon, the family of Olympian gods, arranged their responsibilities, each contributing their unique grace to the balance of the world. As for Rhea, the loving mother who had set this great change in motion with her bravery and cunning, she too found peace in the new era. Zeus and his siblings honoured Rhea as the mother of the Olympians. They invited her to reside with them on Mount Olympus, not as a reigning queen as she had been with Cronus, but as a revered elder and cherished mother. Rhea, her heart now unburdened of fear and grief, graciously accepted. She did not seek power or title. It was enough to see her children safe, united, and happy. In the years to come, Rhea would sometimes visit the valleys of the earth or the secret caves she knew so well, but often she remained on Olympus. She became a gentle advisor and comforter, a bridge between the old world and the new. With quiet joy, Rhea watched the Olympian age unfold, satisfied that the future was bright. Upon the earth, humans, who in those days were only just beginning to live and thrive, found that they could plant and reap in peace. No longer did the ground tremble beneath their feet without warning, and the storms that once raged fiercely now came gently when needed, bringing nourishing rains for their crops. The natural world seemed in harmony again, and people felt a new sense of safety under the watch of the benevolent young gods. They built warm hearths in honour of Hestia. They held marriages under Hera's blessing, and they enjoyed the fruits of Demeter's fields. They gave thanks to Poseidon for calm seas when they fished or sailed, and to Zeus for the rain that quenched the soil and the storms he kept at bay. And though they feared the underworld, they respected Hades for providing a place of rest for souls when life's journey was done. In all aspects of life, the influence of the Olympians was kindly felt. Under the Olympians' care, humankind slowly began to prosper, not knowing the full extent of the cosmic battle that had secured their peace, but feeling the gentle balance and benevolence now present in nature's every turn. Mount Olympus, the victorious gods established their shining abode. With help from the Cyclopes and guided by their own divine will, they built a grand palace of marble and gold atop the mountain's summit. Its columns were tall as ancient oaks, and its halls were spacious, draped in clouds and lit by the fire of Hestia's ever-glowing hearth. There the Olympians took their thrones. Zeus's throne was of polished black marble, shot through with veins of gold, and above it hung the Aegis, his shield of storm, glowing faintly with an aura of power. Hera's throne beside him was ivory and crystal, elegant and strong. Poseidon's seat gleamed sea blue and was engraved with coral patterns, while Hades, who mostly kept to his underworld realm, had a silent, shadowy throne reserved for him when he visited. Demeter's chair was adorned with carved wheat and poppies, and Hestia often preferred a simple wooden stool near the hearth, for she valued humility. In this way, each god's nature was reflected in their new home. That first evening on Olympus, as the sun set in a symphony of colours and the stars emerged one by one, the Olympians held a great celebration. They dined on ambrosia and nectar, the divine foods that now sustained them, and they laughed and told tales of both the past and dreams of the future. In the soft radiance of twilight, they remembered those who had helped them reach this day. Zeus did not forget his early protectors on Crete. As the stars spangled the sky, he raised his cup in honour of Amalthea, the goat who nursed him, and the nymphs who had cared for him. To etch their memory into the very fabric of the heavens, Zeus gently cast a set of stars into a new arrangement. High above, a cluster of stars shimmered into the shape of a goat. There, among the constellations, Zeus placed Amalthea, so that her kindness would always be remembered in the night sky. On clear nights, her constellation can be seen as the gentle goat Capra, a quiet guardian in the stars. It's said that her shining presence offers comfort to all who gaze up, just as her milk and love comforted baby Zeus. Zeus also took the horn that Amalthea had gifted him, the horn of plenty, and breathed upon it a blessing. From that moment, the horn became the cornucopia, a symbol of endless abundance. It would spill forth fruits, breads, and flowers without end. The Olympians agreed that this magical cornucopia would be used to ensure the prosperity of the mortal world, to make certain that people never suffered famine without divine help, and to offer bounty during festivals and feasts. This was Zeus's gracious gift to the mortals who would honour them. And so, after great struggle, order and peace spread across the world under the kind watch of the Olympian gods. The long, dark night of war was over, and a bright morning had come. The tale of Zeus and the rise of Olympus became a story told in every corner of Greece in later ages, a story of destiny, bravery, and renewal. For generations, poets and parents would recount how the young Zeus overthrew Cronus and brought a new era of harmony, often as a gentle bedtime tale to assure children that in the end, wisdom and love triumph over fear. Now our gentle saga draws to its close. The Titans have been vanquished and given their rest, and the new gods keep watch over a balanced world. Picture, if you will, the great hall of Mount Olympus quiet at last. The celebrations have ended. Torches flicker low. The gods have retired to their chambers or to their constellations in the sky. All around, the night is calm and clear. Stars twinkle kindly over the world below. A crescent moon casts its soft glow upon Olympus's marble steps, and a silence as sweet as climbs the mountain. Dear listener, the story of Zeus and the rise of Olympus has been softly told, and now it drifts into silence. The same comforting order that he brought to the cosmos extends to your room tonight. For in this moment, all is quiet and still around you. Not a leaf stirs, not a sound intrudes, only a gentle hush remains, as profound as that first peaceful night after the Great War, when all of creation breathed a sigh of relief. As you lie here, feel the serenity that comes after the resolution of a long journey, like the earth after a cleansing rain, like the sky after a gentle storm. Your mind can now settle into clear calm. You're safe. You are at peace. Just as the cosmos found its harmony, you too can find complete rest. In this soft darkness, you're cradled by the night, just as baby Zeus was once cradled and protected in his secret cave. Nothing can harm you here. All is well. Breathe in slowly and feel the calm of this moment. Breathe out and let any remaining tension slip away, becoming as distant as a fading echo on Mount Othrys. The ancient stars above, the same that shine over Olympus, twinkle softly overhead. Perhaps among them, the kind light of Amalthea's constellation shines down, a reminder that you are cared for and watched over in the silence of the night. Now it is time to let go of this tale and drift into your own peaceful dreams. The great battle is over, and peace reigns in the heavens, on the earth, and in your room tonight. Your body is relaxed and your mind is calm. Let the quiet power of this ancient, comforting story carry you safely into the realm of sleep. May your sleep be as tranquil as a still midnight on Mount Olympus, and your dreams as gentle as a summer cloud. Good night, dear one, and sweet dreams. Let this calm, timeless night embrace you, and rest well. Sleep now under the kindly stars.